All right, everybody, welcome to a rare, unique. This is almost going to be like the collector's item of Zoom calls. I am thrilled to bring in two gentlemen I guess I'm proud to have known for a while. I don't know about that, but all kidding aside, these two gentlemen have written a book, and the moment I heard this book was being put together, I was thrilled because this whole book is based off of a game that I thought was just an incredible ball game. I still say to this day, one of the top 5 games I've had the pleasure of being at and covering for as long as I've been doing this. Of course, I'm talking about the Derg-Oh game. I've got the book right here. And on the Zoom call, we have the co-writers, if you will, Andy Peterson and Mick Peterson joining us. And first of all, Mick, I'll start with you. First of all, you look good, which I know is not easy to say for you, but you actually look good. How have you been? And congratulations on the book.
Well, thanks a lot, Edge. It was a labor of love for me. I mean, from the outside looking in, it was a great collaboration between my brother and me, and it was kind of a tribute. I think we had kind of agreed that it was a tribute to our late brother Tom, who was also going to be in on this from the get-go. And once when he passed away about a year ago, I think, I know Andy really wanted to run point, and I was more than happy to take the information and try to put pen to paper and put everything together. So it's been fun. It's kind of given us here in Illinois a little bit of break because, what high school team wouldn't want to have been practicing the last 2 days?
Yeah.
Knowing that they were in the playoffs, the weather being November weather in October, and it would have been fun. But here's a chance to sit back, relax, and enjoy, and go back and revisit one of the greatest games in Illinois High School Association history.
Yeah, no doubt. And Andy, you obviously were truly in the middle of the fire during this whole season as defensive coordinator and being involved in this. And I've got to imagine this just brought back more and more memories the more people you talk to and really dug into it.
Yeah, Tim, the funny part is when the kids that were juniors that were playing and they read it, 80% of the stuff in that book they had no idea about. I mean, being young kids, and they didn't know what was really going on with Dan Darlington and all that. So it's funny to get their perspective of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the revelations I got from reading this was, there was a lot obviously going on at the time with Dan and a lot of behind the scenes stuff. And you were able to answer some of those and put some of that puzzle together. And, I think what really made this book as well is the fact that you had a lot of cooperation from a lot of different people, including Dan Darlington and Dan Sharp. And hard to do, or was it relatively okay to get everyone to kind of jump in and help out on this?
Dan Sharp is the biggest factor in this book being done. When I approached him about it, he said, and this is a guy that's played in so many big football games that we'll never even know what it's like.
Yeah.
And he told me, he said, Andy, the difference about that game, that was an event. He goes, that wasn't a football game. That was an event. The whole, and it's like we were talking beforehand, Edgy, with the buildup in the Joliet 815 area, the talent that was on the field that night, the fan base, the rivalry. He says, we got off the bus that night and we knew it was going to be a different event. He goes, but he was my driving force behind it. When he clicked on and he told me to go ahead, it was all go.
When let's try to set up the picture a little bit. I mean, I think everyone involved knew that Morris was going to be really good in 2005. You're coming off the year before. You got the state title game. You lost the JCA. So did you guys sense that as well? Like, as soon as that season ended the year before, did it take very long to get the guys back together and say, look, now we know where we have to go. We know what we have to do. We've kind of tame the beast, or we seen the beast? Now we know how much more we got to work and get after it, or did that take a little while?
Well, the funny part is once that game ended in November, because of my work situation, I don't get near the high school again because that's our busy time.
Yeah.
I used to work at LaSalle Station back then. And so whatever went on with the school, I was just, I had nothing to do with it. When I went and talked to David Werda and George Derg-Oh, they had a feeling, everybody knew the talent coming back, for one thing. But the thing about with the timing of Dan putting in his resignation, it was a very uneasy time over at Morris High School at that time.
Yeah, there's no doubt. And Mick, going through this and as you mentioned, putting paper to pen or however you do it these days, what were some of the revelations of this that maybe you weren't aware of while you were digging through this?
Well, I because you're on the outside, again, like I said, outside looking in, I had no idea how deep, it's really like after the fact, how deep the trauma was at Morris High School regarding, number one, the closing of the Collins Station, which took away all their money. I did not know about the situation on the faculty that was going on with, the two sides going of, the pro side and then the side of regarding the superintendent and the school board and what they had to do. And after we got the information and we, if we made a mistake, well, we did make a couple mistakes in here, but if we made a mistake, we probably could have gone even further into that. But I felt that as we were going through it, it was a piece of the puzzle. It wasn't the major focus of the puzzle, but at the same time, it was very critical to the puzzle. And we had to get to that point because there were so many factors going on at the time. Morris had no coach, and there wasn't anybody out there that they were going to get from the outside, and nobody from the inside really wanted it. Yeah. And it was a very trying situation. In the month of February and the month of March back in 2005 were very, very tough for that school. Yeah. Once that got done, there was healing time, and there had to be a healing time between the time in which George took the job and the beginning of the season. And then there was a bunch of rookie coaches. One is sitting right below, he's in the bottom panel here. They never coached at the varsity level. Brother Tom had, but he was a head, and he's been a long time since he'd been an assistant. Yep. And George had never really run a program before. So there were a lot of ifs going on. Yep. The one common denominator. What's that?
There were nobody at the lower levels either.
Yeah, and the lower level. Yeah, the lower level people were had to be hung on. And George told me when I sat down with him, because I got to interview him, and that was really extremely eye-opening. But they were hoping to get some assistant coaches from first-year teachers that were going to be coming into the school, because that's the only way they were going to pay them. Because money was so tight.
Let me remind everyone, okay? This is Morris High School. This isn't some 1A school on the middle of anywhere. This is freaking Morris High School with the tradition, with Dan Darlington, with winning, with championships. So, it's amazing to hear that when you're thinking, you would think there would be people flocking to go be a part of that program. It's amazing.
Well, there probably were. But the thing of it is, they didn't have the money to pay them. Money was so tight. And the story, the coach, they were told that the head coach was going to come from within the building, or they didn't know what they were going to do. Yeah. So heck,
that goes back to the letter that everybody signed.
Yeah, go ahead. Well, yeah, that's true. Then there was a letter, and it's in the book, and we're not going to reveal all the stuff that's in there because otherwise they won't buy
one.
Yeah, so they want to know. And it was it was very, very important. But then when the transition came in, and you got a chance to watch the way these guys kind of brought people along, and all of a sudden, you have Jamie Cumby show up, who had been there for a year, and what he was doing at the time, and it all centers around, had George Derg-Oh left Morris that year to go someplace else with his family, because that's one of the things.
Yeah.
And the decisions, and the reasons for those decisions are laid out in the story. And so, you get a chance to get to that point. Then the season, we don't even mess with the season.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some great games during the season, but if that's the case, we'd still be writing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no doubt about it. Does that part of the whole story, did that really get lost as far as George and the job that he and you guys, Andy, were able to do to get that team out there? I mean, yeah,
Well,
it's great to have talent, and talent helps you win ball games, but after everything you guys had to deal with and going in, and Mick, you know this as well as anyone, you don't want to be the guy after the guy.
Exactly. I was just going to say that.
After the guy.
We even talked about that the year prior to that. Nope, we're off talk. I'm asking Jim Farber, who was an assistant. I go, "You going to take it?" He goes, "I ain't following him." Nobody wants to follow the legend, right? We all.
Yep.
It's like death. It's like there's no way you're going to win. And George, thank God, George took it, and he took a lot of heat for it. We all took a lot of heat for it, for following Dan. But we just kind of simplified things, and we relied heavy on the senior class and the leaders that those kids turned out to be.
You talk about leaders, Andy. And as we talked about before we started recording, was that, what was funny from my whole standpoint of this was I kind of knew the Morris kids better than I knew the JCH kids going into that game, because, I was dealing with Jamie Cumby with recruiting. I was dealing with Alex Perry with recruiting, Dane Zabalin, and obviously Derg-Oh. And so I really got to know those kids on a personal level. And, what I was always impressed was, you mentioned that group of seniors and the leadership. And what's really neat was you had different personalities. I mean, let's face it, John Derg-Oh's a quiet kid. But what I found amazing was, even though he was quiet, he was that strong leader. And talk about who were the main handful of leaders on that team and how those personalities were different, but they all came together.
I just got off the phone with John earlier tonight because I wrote him a letter, and I remember my first drill with him because I'd never got to coach him. The kid played varsity his whole career, and I'm a freshman, sophomore coach, and I remember those kids, you got to tell which way's left, which way's right. And John came up to run a drill, and I'd never seen anybody run the drill that hard in my life. And I'm just like, this was the first day of summer camp. He ran up, he got everything ready, and then he ran at 100 miles an hour. I'm just like, wow, this kid is all in, right? Then you realize what you're dealing with. And then it's kind of like when I told him, I go, when I saw the thing about Michael Jordan and the Bulls, I saw how hard he practiced, and I said, I'm going to coach that hard because I'm not letting that kid down. I'm going to do everything it takes. And him, Cumby, Perry, Dane Zabalin, I could go up and down the list, but those kids just said, guys, follow us. And John was in the middle of all that stuff with the coaches and Darlington, and he never let it get to him. He never let it show. And he's just one of the people that you just thank God you got to just be along for the ride and watch him.
And I made in the forward I wrote and mentioned the impact to any diehard Joliet Catholic fan. You mentioned that one word to them, and it makes them cringe to this day, and that's that name Derg-Oh.
Well, the thing is, you talk about what was going on in Morris, up in Joliet. It was, almost 180 degrees. You know, here's a team that had just come off winning, you know, back-to-backs, and they had a long streak going, and then they come up with this goal that they're not going to allow their total of 1,000 yards rushing for the entire season. And I'll be danged if in game 11 they were only at 700. Well, you know, you make statements like that, but you know, Morris didn't go into that game thinking that John was going to gain 350 yards or whatever the heck it was. Not at all. But still, at the same time, up in Joliet, Dan Sharp was just, it's business. It was business as usual in Joliet, every bit as much as it was business as unusual in Morris. And that's the story.
And let's face it, it's Joliet Catholic. They have played the best of the best, and they saw all the top teams and all the top talent, and they knew they could shut down one kid. One kid was not going to beat them.
No.
You know, that was the mentality. And I mean, has there ever been a bigger first play offensively than Derg-Oh's touchdown run in that game?
Not the game of that magnitude. Not the game of that magnitude.
You talk about setting a tone. That truly.
It's fun, and it's funny because when I talked to Joe Benson, you know, here's a kid that, you know, he's up for Player of the Year.
Yeah.
He can't wait to beat Morris because all his relatives in Morris are giving him all this flack and stuff. He says, as soon as John ran down the sideline, he said, I heard all these people go, wow, he's that good. Because they'd never seen him play, right? Because they play on Friday nights.
Yep.
And they go, maybe he's that good this year that they're actually going to beat us. He goes, I've never heard anybody mention that before, that first play.
Well, you know, there's an unsung hero in this game that probably didn't get enough recognition for his performance. And I don't know how much of it he still remembers 15 years later, but that's Justin Gordon, the fullback, because there are so many crunchers that he made in that game. It was kind of like, I'm going to be that sacrificial lamb. And he was. I mean, when you're in the I formation, very often, you know, 90% of the time, at least it was in Morris's the way they did it, fullback never saw the ball.
Right.
Ever, you know.
Glorified guard.
And he did. I mean, we explain, you know, if following the play, when you watch it on film and then you watch the way it was designed and then the pictures we got from it, you know, the photographers that came through with pictures, it just kind of solidified all the things that a guy could make it as an analysis of that opening play. Because in reality, I'll say it should have been a 3-yard gain.
Yeah.
That should also they should have had. But in order to see what really happened, then you got to make sure that, you know, you got to read all the little details that go into it. That's what made it fun for me.
And Andy and I were talking before we started, and what was neat about going back and reading it was, you know, I do remember how close the game was at the end. But boy, I forgot how close the game was at the end.
I will never forget how close it was at the end. How's that? Never.
He still remembers it. You know, the soliloquy that Andy has during the timeout that George called. You know, he didn't want to call a timeout, and George calls a timeout because you know,
everybody's tired.
The guys, they were gassed. I mean, they were gassed.
Yeah.
I mean, Morris was gassed. They had guys playing both sides of the ball and mix up in a secondary and all that kind of stuff. And the timeout, and then Andy's soliloquy, what's going through his head, I thought, you know, when I first saw it, I'm going, oh my gosh, this has got to go in word for word eventually. And it really is. It's really, you know, the call to Denny Steele by far is the one thing I remember.
A friend. Looking for a phone a friend.
Yeah.
Yeah, unbelievable. And again, I remember. I always remember the pregame, as I mentioned in my forward, walking through that crowd, and guys, it was tense. It was tense. You could cut the tension with a knife. So I'll always remember that. I'll always remember, obviously, the first play. I can never forget that. I remember the reaction after, right after it happened, and you guys did, Mick, you guys did a great job laying that whole thing out. And it was such a rush and a mixture of joy, tears, shock. I mean, literally within 2 minutes, I think the entire town of Morris was on the football field. It was unbelievable to be a part of that.
You know, in
Well,
reality, not
once they-
as many went out on the field as what I thought. You know,
You look back,
I think so many of them
We're
were
in shock.
exhausted
Yeah.
from the game and,
Yeah.
and what they had witnessed on both sides of the ball. You know, if you were over on the west side where Joliet was, the frustration that you had to feel that you were down there and down there and down there and not get in, and the same son of a gun stopped you all the times that you were down there.
Yep.
You know, that had to be it. And on the east side, the exhilaration, the ecstasy, and I think the word joy, it had to be the release of emotions. I mean, you know, that's so hard to describe, but I think we try to do a very good job. I hope Andy agrees that trying to paint the picture from both
that did a great
sidelines.
job.
You know, I wish we had more pictures of the Joliet sideline after the game. Not that we want to, you know, just so that everyone could see what they were going through. Because I've walked that walk. I know that feeling.
Yeah.
We had the feeling when we played Joliet 5 years before that down here in Pontiac.
I remember.
Oh, I mean that, you know, that game sticks in my craw every bit as much as the one there, because it wasn't quite the event that was in 2005.
No, but it was a pretty big deal. Certainly for Pontiac.
It was like good first show before the highlight show came out later on.
And then I mean, there's so many great parts of this book, but the one that really got me, and because I remember it was, and you have to get the book to see what I'm talking about, but there's one picture I'm in with a Morris player and your brother that I will always remember. And I'm not going to tell you who that was, because you're going to have to buy the book and see. But it was one of those moments where you saw that emotion, that raw emotion coming from a player, and it was just amazing. It was just amazing. And to this, I still get choked up a little bit just remembering that, because, you know, you talk about the game and what people get from it, what they put into it. That was one of those moments where you saw how much it meant to that kid and what it meant to those coaches, and to just be a witness to that was amazing. Absolutely amazing.
And I got to tell you, you know, the best part of this thing was I got to I got to know Joe Benson. I got to know Billy McEwen. And, you know, I went and saw Billy McEwen up at a Glazer clinic up in Oak Brook. And he was the last speaker, the last day. And I sat in there and listened to him. And he finished talking to people after. And then I walked up to him, introduced myself, and said, I don't think you remember me, but I haven't seen you in 15 years. And the last time I saw you, you were in tears. And he looked at me like, what? Well, yeah, I'm the coordinator at Morris. And he came and he goes, oh, you son of a. And then, but after I talked to him on the phone, what a great kid. I mean, great man now. I mean, he's a D coordinator up at St. Xavier, national champion. And you know why Joliet Catholic is what they are, because them kids are such class and know what they're doing and have their heads on straight. I got nothing but good things to say about the Joliet Catholic kids. They were just class from top to bottom.
Well, and and I've been trying to say this for years about this area, and I proudly say this is the greatest high school football area in the state of Illinois. And a big part of that is the coaching, and your teams reflect your coaches, and that goes for Morris to Minooka to Joliet Catholic to Providence to Lincoln Way, all the way up and down 80. You get great teams led by great coaches and character. That is what I thought, and it goes back to this game, and it's been that way for as long as I've been out here. And I think that's what makes this area special, no doubt.
Oh,
I think
hands down.
to take that one step further, Tim, is um, each of those communities has a culture, and that's what makes it so successful. There's an expected culture, and even though there was uproar and everything in Morris, the culture stayed. You know, for all intents and purposes, you know, I believe this for a long, long time, is that any time a coach comes in and takes over, he's actually coaching the prior team. No matter how much he can get his own stuff in, he's going to be coaching that other team. So it's just great to see. I mean, it happens so often, and there are other high schools in the country that can do this. But I'm just glad that we were able to get our story told.
Yeah, no doubt, to just be in that space and time, and it was special. All right, guys, how do people get this book? And again, I'm going to continue to rave about it. It's a great read. And as we talked about early on, in this time with everything going on with COVID and us being shut down, believe me, some Friday night, sit down and read this, because it'll take everything away from this ridiculousness we're going through right now. So guys, how do they get a hold of this?
There's a website. It's the Derg-Oh game on Facebook. You can get on there. You can get on the Derg-Oh book at gmail.com.
Okay.
I actually dropped off a copy up at Thayer's Restaurant in Joliet, hoping to get some nibbles up there.
Yep.
They were very nice to me. I got nothing good
Ricky's
things to say up there about them.
Ricky's a great guy, no doubt.
Oh, great people, man. And if they can get on my website too, Andy Peterson on Facebook, they can get a hold of me, and I'll run one up to them. We've had people from Iowa, from Oregon, Byron, Central Illinois. I mean, it's been pretty humbling, you know, some of the reception we've had.
Well, we're gonna continue to plug it. I'm definitely gonna be plugging it for you all through here. And
I appreciate that.
You know, again, guys, I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys asking me to play a part in it.
It meant the world. You were the stamp we needed. Thank you.
Stamp of approval.
Reject.
Like John Derg-Oh says, you're the man. You will always be the man.
Hey, you guys, for what you guys have done and continue to do. And Mick, you just keep going along, man. I'm telling you.
I appreciate that.
I see your tweets every morning, like at 6 a.m. on Twitter. and I'm just like, you know what? I love seeing that every day. I miss your brother. Loved your brother.
Yeah.
Great guy. I used to see him out at Charter Fitness. He used to go when he would sneak in there and get some workout in. Miss him for sure, and thought about him during all this, and keep it going, guys. So again, I appreciate it. This has been a blast, and I will.
Hey, I just want to say something, Tim, about you. And we talked beforehand, but when this game was going on, your website had just come on. You were hotter than pancakes. Like we talked about the gridiron pull out in Joliet. That was. I told Bill Scheibe, I go, that's some of the best sports writing you'll ever see. Yep. Joe Benson, McEwen talked about it. You know, every kid would race down to get the Joliet Herald on, I think, Thursdays is when it came out.
Thursday night.
And I blow up at Bolingbrook. He'd wait up till midnight to get the first copy.
Yep.
You know, that's how good that was.
That was great.
I mean, the kids were aware of how it was the epicenter of football in Illinois that year. I mean, we had the player of the year and the defensive player come out of this little town in Morris, Illinois. That says something.
Yeah, no doubt. And it was well earned.
But you guys were top notch in all your coverage of all the sports. You always have been and always will be.
Well, the battle continues, but glad to still be around to fight it. And all right, guys, I will definitely be in touch. Everybody, by all means, get this book, okay? I highly recommend it. Even though Mick Peterson wrote it, I highly recommend it.
And we're going to try to get you back to Ebby George's on November 11th.
All right, you promised that. Look, I even have more than one book.
Oh my gosh!
Okay.
Yeah, you can get the originals. You can. I have books down here in Pontiac. You can contact me on Facebook as well, and you can also get the trilogy. I mean, The trilogy's making
I
a
know.
comeback. So,
I know.
well, we got the originals, and now we got the extra crispy.
All right, guys. Well, thanks.
All right. Thanks, Edgy.